Madam Speaker, ladies and gentlemen, what we get from the previous speaker is this whole chicken and the egg problem. Meaning, wait, is it because of war that there's kulang resources, or is it like kulang resources that there's war? I don't think it particularly matters given the very complex and ambiguous situation that is carried out there for the past decades. But what I do know is all of these different internal and external countries and stakeholders have their own selfish interests that they want to prioritize. Precisely because the previous speaker mentioned, some do it out of glory and the desire to be able to put their nation or empire above others. Some people might want to do it out of resource, war, and necessity. But what I do know is that we cannot assume rationality from these individuals who for far too long have been trying to come into our continent or destabilize the continent from within through pirates and other rebel groups and individuals who create militia to try and destabilize the union and region. That is why the POI of Jaron was important, because he questions their particular strategy. A lot of what they said kind of sounds like doubling down on military intervention, which is actually the heart of opposition stance. Meaning, their side has to be able to take a very clear trade-off in terms of demilitarizing and being able to not fight or push back against conflict in order to be able to directly get military aid. A few key points of framing which we think are important for this debate. The first is, this is a value judgment debate and making a comparison of what exactly is the consequence of redirection. Note, this is not a debate about whether or not war or self-defense is good, or whether or not getting fucking food and water and medicine is more important than good, because like no shit, right? Being able to like literally help people is more important. But this debate is not as simple as that. We need to take into account the short term and the long term. And what we posit very clearly from side opposition is that in the short term, we need to be able to continue fighting the good fight and being able to keep strong military presence in areas where we're already winning, and even double down in military areas where we potentially might lose in order to prevent external stakeholders coming in and invading and destabilizing the region, or factionalism, ladies and gentlemen, which a lot of these insurgents and rebel groups try to do when they try and break the fifth column from within and destabilize the region. Things that they do when they rig elections, things that they do when they try and assassinate certain opposition groups, etc. Meaning, yes, we agree that resources are important, but even if you get these resources when you do it yourself, it won't be sustainable at the point in which you're not able to prevent yourself from external threats like other countries, or even more dangerously, people from within trying to take from you. Because a lot of what the previous speaker said proves this characterization, that the individuals are ruthless, these individuals are desperate, which is exactly why before we get any form of aid, we need to be able to continue pushing back against the very people trying to take our things. We think, absent this particular redirection, we can still be able to get aid in a multitude of ways. A, continued support from international communities, particularly the UN, WHO, World Bank, and IMF. Their side might say, but we might be over-reliant to them. It's fine, man. Like you said, we've been doing it for quite some time, and I don't think the region has plunged itself into civil war just yet, contrary to popular belief. Absent that, things can get worse, and that's likely to happen on your side. B, they can still get particular resources from important hegemonic powers in the world like the US, China, and European Union, because they already give support, and in instances where Trump goes fucking protectionist and tries to be able to say, no, we're gonna tariff you everyone and we won't get from you, that's where an arbitrage opportunity comes from the EU, India, and even China to be able to push back against that, because they want to get on the good side of the African Union, because they are an important commodities and resource depot for the entire world, ladies and gentlemen. Rare earth metals such as gold, copper, diamonds, cacao, and coffee primarily form a huge part of their GDP, of which they export to the rest of the world. That in itself becomes an incentive structure for them to continue getting aid, and we think it's in the interest of the African Union to potentially even be able to negotiate things like embargoes and pushing back against sanctions, even being able to negotiate what kind of aid they need, whether they need humanitarian aid or even in instances where they need some sort of funding to directly be able to buy those particular things, such as malaria nets and other kinds of vaccines to be able to deal with Ebola and even COVID. That's what they've done. It's ultimately worked. What exactly have we proved to you so far, right? We've proved to you, and the path to victory coming from our side comes from the following impacts. The first is discussing the consequence of redirection in terms of it potentially being much worse on their side in the short term, of which as a consequence, there is no long term because external people come in and like pillage and destroy you, or it falls from within when you entrench yourself in civil conflict. The second impact is in terms of being able to prove a strategic allocation of aid and resources, which we think isn't the sole burden of the African Union. Because you have to understand, this isn't an actor motion, this isn't a policy motion, and it's not like the only source of humanitarian aid is Africa getting it from themselves and being able to get from what they have. We think it's in their interest, as what they've done in the past, to continue being able to defend their borders, being able to go into conflict in order to protect their very individuals and show power that they are a force to be reckoned with, and that the union of 55 states and more come together. The whole is greater than the sum of its parts. Precisely because, as they say, a good defense is a good offense. We need to be able to stand strong and be able to push back against these people who are trying to destabilize us in order for us to be able to protect the corridors coming in and get the aid from the people who have helped us, who are helping us, and who will likely help us. We are very proud to stand on side negative.